Good morning, gang. Happy Wednesday morning. It's about 10 after 7 here, my time. And Mrs. P and I just finished listening to Putin's State of the Union for all intents and purposes, okay, his annual speech that he gives to the Federal Assembly. Now, figured just like any State of the Union here that you'd have in the United States, or probably, forgive me here, I don't know exactly how this is all done in Australia or England or Canada or anything like that, but I'm assuming there's an annual speech everywhere, that your head politician will give to the country. All right, same thing here. Now, of course, Putin spent a good amount of time talking about COVID and the economy and things like that. Totally understand. All right. And so that was immaterial to what we were looking at. But about 3/4 of the way through, got into the important part on basically what is going on. And he didn't really talk about Ukraine much at all to speak of. It was more centralized, talking to the Russian people. Now, what gets very interesting is, and again, this is, Mrs. P giving me her analysis as well from living in the Soviet Union. Putin seemed to be very much on the victim mentality, I guess, if you will, that the whole world is repressing Russia, looking down upon Russia, not taking Russia seriously, whatever it is, didn't care. And it's up to him to take care of the Russian people. Now, there's some truth to that. It is up to him to take care of the Russian people. But a lot of the reason that I think, at least, that people are dissuaded, other nations are dissuaded from helping the Russians is because of Putin. Not what he's doing is helping the people, but what he's doing is actually the cause for some of the repression that's going on. Now, not that he'd ever say something like that. Of course not. No leader's ever going to say, oh, it's all my fault. It never happens. It's deflect, deflect, deflect. That's like, politics 101. But so he got into talking about what was going on in Belarus a few weeks back. And if y'all heard this or not, supposedly there was a assassination attempt on the Belarusian president. And, they apparently it was U.S. backed and the whole 9 yards. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of proof to what's going on. Maybe it happened or whatever, but it certainly wasn't some well thought out CIA planned, assassination attempt or whatever it was. But it's enough to get the people's attention, if you will. And so you get situations like that, then add in everything with Navalny, who, of course, was on his hunger strike or whatever, but, identifying and calling out the corruption and any sort of the misdoings in government. Well, what Putin was talking about between the Navalny group and the supposed assassination attempt on Belarus, or the Belarusian president, was that basically, everybody's spies. And, this comes almost out of like a John le Carre novel or something. He had mentioned at one point in there, about Rudyard Kipling and Mowgli and how the tiger, representing the United States, was being circled by all the jackals, obviously that being all the countries of Europe, getting ready to attack. And, so now you start taking this back to, he's trying to reinstitute Stalin-esque policies, say, if you will, go back to the late 1930s, okay, where if you disagreed with Stalin back in the 30s, you were automatically a spy. Okay, didn't matter. I mean, all of a sudden, half the country, 1937, 30 million some odd people were spies. They didn't agree with what Stalin was doing. They're an enemy of the state. Boom, and 30 million people are killed by the government. This is kind of the path he's taking the Russian people on in this speech is, follow me, I'm the second coming, if you will. I have all the answers. Now, that gets very scary because the next things he was talking about in the speech was on Russian military buildup. And I found it very interesting. My background is the weapon systems that he was talking about were all offensive, not defensive. I mean, he was talking about planes to carry nuclear missiles. He was talking about Poseidon, the nuclear torpedo, if you will. He was talking about hypersonic missiles. That's not defense. Those are offensive weapons. Okay, he didn't mention anything about defending the motherland, if you will. It was all about offensive. He never mentioned Ukraine by name. He never mentioned the United States by name. But the analogies he was using, very much you could tell that the enemy was the U.S. Like I said, in the tiger, the United States, surrounded by all the jackals, the rest of Europe. Then you go back to what he was talking about, future generations of Russia, and reestablishing or expanding upon, I guess, the military education for students. And I mean, not only, in a military school, which, that would make sense, okay, but in the public schools, and that everybody was going to get a military education. Now, you go back to the Soviet era and you think of the young communists and, the pictures that we all saw, of the kids in uniform and learning to march and don a gas mask and whatever it would be, okay? Think about if something like that was done here in the United States. I'm sure there's military schools, I get that, just like there are there. But imagine you send your kid to, Smithville Public School here, and, your son or daughter is told that they're going to wear this military uniform, and the education they're going to get today is on, reading, writing, arithmetic, and bullets. That's kind of what you're getting into here. So obviously this was a speech for the Russian public. The rest of the world obviously is going to hear it, and we get to do what we do, is read into what he's saying. But making, he was trying to bring this into, the strength of the motherland, which I've got no problem with. Every country should be proud of their country. Every person, every citizen should be proud of their country. Don't get me wrong by that whatsoever. But when you start talking about, if you, reading between the lines, if you don't agree with the direction I'm taking the country in, you're an enemy of the state, that's an issue. So now, I mean, and that's the part of the speech that was most relevant to the rest of us. I mean, his COVID response and, building new bridges and infrastructure and stuff like that. I mean, okay, fine. But I mean, obviously that was in the speech. I'm going to link the English translation from RT into the bottom here. It's a little difficult to understand because the translator is speaking at about the same voice level as Putin, who's obviously giving the speech in Russian. But if you care to sit and listen to the whole thing, it's probably, where is it? At the, about the 1 hour mark, you're going to want to start listening to it. About halfway, 2/3 of the way through, that's where he gets into all this. But that was kind of what it was. It was an interesting speech. He didn't say much. Like I said, no mention of what's going on in Ukraine at all, which really surprised me. But he hemmed and hawed and hinted around, saying, if NATO or anybody pokes the bear, if you will, there will be a swift and serious response. So he's still trying to portray Russia as the victim here, that, we're just doing training exercises, and nobody can tell us what to do with training and where in our country, which I agree with. Okay, if the United States wanted to, we could do training right along the Rio Grande and put tanks all over the place. It doesn't mean we're going to war with Mexico, but with the situation that's going down there at the moment, it's kind of odd. The number of troops, which obviously we're hearing different numbers come out of everywhere, so that makes it very interesting. But then you get the shelling that's going back and forth, between the Ukrainians and the Russians. That's okay. Joe Average, Ukrainian or Russian or whatever, doesn't have 82 millimeter mortars in his preps. So, that's military ordnance that they're using there. So, there's something going on. But he, being the sly fox Putin is, he didn't tip his hand one way or another what's going on. But it was just kind of a little bit of a warning going, if you guys try to push, we're going to push back. And so he's trying to portray himself to the people, and probably the world at this point, is he's actually taking a defensive posture, and he's trying to paint the Ukrainians as the attackers here. Now, it's kind of hard to attack your own territory, because if Putin, again, think of the logic of this. If Putin is claiming we can do whatever we want in way of military buildup on, our territory, within the borders of Russia, well, by that definition, so can Ukraine, which, last time I checked, Luhansk and Donbass are in the territorial region of Ukraine. So they can do whatever they want. The Russians can't. So, it's kind of listening to that, I'll use this term again, rules for thee and not for me. Why it should be okay for Russia to do something, but Ukraine not. Russia is supposedly defending Russia. Haven't heard any stories about the Ukrainians trying to go into Rostov or something like that and try to run over the Volga or anything and go into Russia. But, it seems to be all the attacking, if you will, is heading west, not east. So it was an interesting speech. I know this is up a little bit late, but I had to listen to the speech, and sorry, Putin doesn't work on my timetable. So, all right, we'll keep paying attention to what's going on for the rest of the day. But that's kind of what was talked about this morning. Have a good one, y'all. Pinball out.